I went overseas. I can't discuss where, but it was in June of this year, 2010. I saw a naked black human shape, no genitals, black egg-shaped oval eyes. It was lying on the floor. I just stood there and stared at it. It seemed to flicker into different shapes. 1 minute it was a dog, then a snake, then back to the human shape. It started speaking to me in a language I didn't recognize. Its voice was soft, in pain. It seemed to be injured. I said, "English," and it said yes. I asked it what it was, and it replied, "I'm a fireman." I asked it where it was from. It replied, "From the land you're standing on, but our fathers came from the sky." I asked it why it was lying on the floor. It replied, "Bad leg." I began to feel more comfortable, so I started throwing at it question after question. From what I understood, they're aliens from another planet, and they're made out of a gas-based substance. They can bend light to make them look like anything they want. They've been on Earth for thousands of years. The one I was talking to was a child, only 200 years old. The adults can travel through portals to any place in the universe. They don't use any technology. They're not very intelligent. I guess it's an ability they have. Just like we can walk and birds can fly, they can travel great distances. From what I understood, humans are the smartest creatures in the universe. There are other creatures on distant planets, but none that are as intelligent as us, or even come close. They like to avoid humans. There are millions of them. Whole cities could exist in a little piece of rock. They drink water, and they feed off the bones of dead animals. I had so many more questions, but he interrupted me and asked me to leave before his father comes looking for him, or I'd be in trouble. I looked around, said goodbye, then walked away and didn't look back. Hello! Welcome to Strange Times number 31. How is everybody? Hope you're all doing really well. I'm actually coming down with a bit of a flu at the moment, so my voice is going to be a little less sexy. But I'll soldier on. Don't you worry about that. First up, we have got a new UFO report that surfaced, and it comes with a nice clear Polaroid picture of the UFO in question. And this report's interesting because it could be related to the Rendlesham forest incident. I guess Rendlesham's alright. But anyway, so what I've got here is a letter and a photograph that was submitted to unexplainedmysteries.com. And the anonymous person that sent the letter claims to be an ex-police officer who was serving around Rendlesham Forest at the time of the famous UFO encounter. So I'll just quickly read that out. I'll just do the highlights and I'll have a quick chat afterwards. Let me take you back to December 26, 1980, a day that would ultimately change and ruin my life forever. It was a bitter cold night, and as a serving police officer, I was on duty. I was attending to a report of a possible domestic in the town of Woodbridge, located in Suffolk, 7 miles northeast of Ipswich, in the east of England. I was roughly about a quarter of a mile away from Woodbridge when, for no apparent reason, my police radio was suddenly swamped with interference. Static electricity and crackling noises started to emerge from it. So I decided to pull my vehicle over to the side of the road and see if I could figure out what the problem was. No sooner than I had stopped the vehicle, there was an intensely bright flash of green light that lit up the whole interior of the car like a Christmas tree. Not sure what to make of what had just happened, I got out of the car to see if I could possibly figure out what caused it. Not really expecting to see anything, I was completely shocked to discover a huge, green, whitish, glowing, illuminated, phosphorescent disc or saucer-shaped craft hovering directly above me in the sky. It was an incredible and unbelievable but frightening spectacle to witness. My skin started to tingle and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The saucer was huge. It was slowly rotating and was making a quiet, whirring noise. As a police officer, I always carried a Polaroid camera in the boot of the police vehicle whenever on driving duties. It's just something that I did. I rushed to the boot to obtain my camera and fired off 3 shots. I then stood there somewhat shaken and continued to view this object. After what felt like an eternity, but was no more than just over a minute or so, the saucer suddenly and without warning soared up high into the sky at a breathtaking and phenomenal speed and was literally gone and out of sight in a nanosecond. I was left standing there thinking to myself, what the hell just happened? 2 of the photos came out completely fogged and showed absolutely nothing, but luckily one came out almost perfect and showed the saucer in all its glory. I have included that original and untouched Polaroid with my email. The time of my sighting was approximately 1:55 a.m, and it really was like something out of a Star Trek movie. To be honest, words are inadequate to even begin to try to explain just how fantastic and how mind-blowing this encounter was. And the color of the saucer, it was like no other green I have ever seen. The photo really doesn't do it justice. Don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful Polaroid, but to see that saucer hovering in the sky and the sheer size of it, and the phenomenal speed at which it departed, the two simply don't compare. It was a truly mind-blowing experience that no photograph could ever capture. Okay, that's pretty much the highlights of it. He does go on, the letter does continue for quite a bit more actually, and I'll just briefly mention he goes on about how his mental health went downhill from there, and so he turned to alcohol. His marriage also failed, he left the police force, and he blames all of this squarely on the effect of seeing something not of this world. So PTSD, he reckons, just from viewing this saucer. Shortly after the sighting, he received threatening phone calls, and somebody attempted an arson attack on his house as well. His superior was also visited by some unusual officials. Quote, in the letter he says, "I can tell you this also. Several days after my encounter, a very good friend of mine who was a high-ranking senior police officer told me that he was visited at home by 3 men claiming to be military intelligence. He said he was simply told, in no uncertain terms, that if anyone mentions the word UFO, then simply tell them that they probably saw the lighthouse and tell them it was faulty at the time. He said they gave him other information, but he wouldn't disclose that to me." Close quote. He also says that other people reported strange activity. Quote, "One man told me that on the 28th of December at 3 a.m, he was awoken by his dog barking furiously at the back kitchen door. He said he opened the door and there was a small glowing orb hovering around his back garden. He said the orb shot off and his dog chased after it. Suddenly the dog went silent, and when he got around the corner of his garden, the orb had fled and all that was left of his dog was a gooey puddle." Close quote. And he goes on here, open quote, "One woman told me that on the 26th of December at 2:30 a.m, she woke up and found herself in a forest staring at a glowing pyramid surrounded by several small humanoid entities. Within seconds, she claimed she was suddenly back in her own bed." Close quote. The author also says that he has information from a trusted source, who he says would know. Quote, "He told me that everyone thinks that the visitors were looking for nuclear weapons, and he told me that that is complete nonsense, that the true explanation is that the visitors had boots on the ground and were doing something in the forest, still yet unknown, and one of their team was captured and killed by the military and shipped out to a secret location for analysis to be studied. And that's the reason the visitors were seen for several days afterwards, at one point shining beams of light down as they were obviously looking for one of their own. Close quote. And apparently there was an update from the author, from this police officer. He sent some more information through, and I'll just quote him here. Just thought I would mention that I got a reply back from a well-known UFO researcher, and he told me that he has had the Polaroid photograph looked at by an expert using the same software and technology that the FBI and CIA photo forensic experts use for analysis. He told me it came back clean as a whistle, completely untouched, not even one pixel. And if it was a manipulated image, that software would have detected it. He said it's one of the best he has ever seen. Something else he pointed out, which I have never seen or noticed in all the years of looking at that photo, was that he was told that clouds are actually in front of the saucer, which makes it very high up and massive, and it would be impossible to fake with a Polaroid camera. Close quote. Alright, so my thoughts. I'm skeptical. Sorry, I was just having a stretch there. I'm skeptical. And just looking at that photo, it's been suggested that it looks like a light being shone through a glass bottle. And it does sort of look like that, but I don't think that's the explanation. As for the clouds, who's to say it's not cigarette smoke? But on the other hand, it could be real. I mean, it's clear, and it does have that sort of, I don't know, what does a flying saucer look like? It could look like that. I want to believe. But another reason why I'm skeptical, it's less about the photo, and it's more about this guy's story. Because he just seems to lay it on a little bit too thick for me. Like, he goes into, I just don't think he would get PTSD from seeing a flying saucer like that. Like, maybe he did get it from his job because he was a cop, if he's telling the truth. And, a lot of cops turn to alcohol, their marriages break up, same with soldiers. And, I can believe that his life did go to shit, but I doubt it was anything to do with the flying saucer. I think he's just adding that for drama. And then some of the details, like the dog that got turned to goo, we've heard about that at Skinwalker Ranch. What else was there? I always get a little bit standoffish when experiences claim to have all of this insider information. Like he's got his supervisor who's been visited by these mysterious men, and he's got more information that he can't share. Then he's got his, deep throat who apparently knows that there was an alien that was caught by the military, shot and killed, taken away to a secret location. Where have we heard that before? It's like a common trope in this field. And, it wasn't nuclear weapons they were looking for. It was their fallen comrade. I'm just not buying it. It just seems cheesy, and it seems like regurgitated information that he's read in books or seen on TV. If he had just left it as, I took a photo while I was on duty, check it out, I'd buy it a lot more, but he's added too much BS, at least to my taste. I don't like the flavour of BS, at least not too much of it. Maybe a sprinkling. But yeah, that's my feel. Could be totally wrong. Maybe he's fully legit. But at the moment, I'm not really buying it. Okay, let's have a look at this next story. Havana Syndrome. Havana Syndrome, which has come to be, what am I trying to say here? The name Havana Syndrome is the name given to that suspected use of directed sonic and energy weapons. I'm sure a lot of you guys know about that report. In the US, there's the US Embassy in Havana. There was staff there that reported strange symptoms like fatigue, headaches, nausea, dizziness, and other weird stuff like the sensation of a car window being half wound down. That flappy noise, that That one. Well, now these attacks are happening again. By this time, it's on US soil. And so the article says here, one of these alleged attacks, which targeted a National Security Council official, took place near the Ellipse, which is the oval lawn on the south side of the White House. And another White House staff member was also reportedly targeted in a Virginia suburb last November. And it's the usual suspects. No one knows who it is, obviously, but the usual suspects being Russia, China, Australia, but I reckon it's Canada. Those bastards. And so when I was going through this article, I was thinking to myself, I came up with a couple of ideas, because like all technology, it depends on who uses it, whether it's going to be used for good or bad. And I reckon this technology would be a pretty effective way to disperse violent riots. Better than using guns, and it would be a lot more effective too. But I think there'd be a lot of ethical questions, using this technology, because you're affecting people's perception of reality, but you're affecting their nervous system. So there's going to be some questions there. I don't know but still, I'd rather feel sick or just, get a headache than be shot. Not that I go rioting very often. In fact, I never have. I'm too lazy. But also I was thinking that it'd be a good security device. Like if you can contain it within, it's kind of like a perimeter, a certain field, you could just turn that thing on when you leave your building and no one's going to break in, or if they do, they'll leave pretty quickly. So for security, that'd be fantastic. And that's my 2 cents. Let's move on to the next one. India. This is the growing Nandi. Have you guys ever heard of this thing? In India, there is this large stone bull idol called Nandi and here we go, Sri Yaganti Uma Mahaswara Temple. And apparently this stone bull is growing. It's expanding. The current size of the Nandi idol is about 5 feet high and 15 feet wide. It is said that people used to do pradakshinas in the past, which is a practice of walking around the idol. But now Nandi has taken up the gap between the stone pillar, making it impossible to walk around. Archaeological Survey of India has confirmed that the idol does actually increase by about 1 inch every 20 years. The department collects data along with the size of the idol every 15 years. Mines and Geology Department Assistant Director C. Mohan Roa from Ellure said that stones can grow due to chemical reactions. Quote, "The rock has silica substances and iron particles. When a mineral is converted to other granules of silica, it expands." Close quote. Just like with humans, when you eat too much McDonald's and KFC, you expand. Trust me, I know this. But yeah, that is weird, isn't it? A growing stone idol. A growing stone god. Only in India, because they've got like all sorts of weird stuff over there. They've got these statues that excrete milk. And what else? All of those yogis that float. And other stuff too. And so from weird India, we're going to weird Chicago. Flying humanoid with tentacles. This is kind of like a Mothman-ish sighting. Or maybe it's something totally different. Let's have a look. A new sighting report has surfaced. The entity was originally seen over Chicago on September 5th, 2011. Quote, "At approximately 4 p.m., the eyewitness was getting off the metro bus at the intersection of South Jeffrey Boulevard and East 67th Street in Jackson Park Highlands in South Chicago, near the Mobil gas station, apparently. He noticed an unusual flying being approximately 100 to 120 feet above him, adjacent to an apartment building in the vicinity. The witness described the entity as black in color with bat-like wings. It had a small bulbous head and what seemed to be tentacles extending from behind it. He stated that it was definitely biological and seemed to be looking down at him and others. He began to follow it as it made its way over Jackson Park and the golf course. As he continued to follow the entity into a stretch of trees, it rolled and displayed an emerald green light on its underbelly. During the entire time, the entity never flapped its wings, but flew up and down in altitude. Also, the witness sensed that the entity was watching him as he chased it. It would dip and turn towards him on occasion. He never determined the structure of the face. The winged being eventually turned toward Lake Michigan and quickly flew towards the east. Close quote. So, what are my thoughts? Well, firstly, I'm thinking, has this guy been pranked by someone with a drone? Because you could just do a cutout of a winged creature, and the fact that it's not flapping sort of lends itself to that idea. Also, the light on the underbelly could be from a drone, and the tentacles could just be streamers coming off the back like a kite. You know? And it being silhouetted against the sky. Hang on, what time was this? 4 p.m. Yeah, so it would have been silhouetted against the sky, so it makes it hard to see the details. But at the same time, that detail about the wings not flapping, that's a common feature of these flying humanoid reports. For some reason, these flying humanoids don't flap, they just seem to hover. And this is going back well before drones. There's reports of these humanoids just hovering around with their wings sticking out. So, it could be the real thing. And with that being said, it's time for me to go. Stay strange, you strange people.